Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is on November 8th, 2017. This is being recorded. And if you want to see all of my episodes online, you can go walkinthepark.tv. I post this up online, so I'll have this up in a day or two. And it also will have the full scheduled cable casts, because there are additional cable casts throughout the week. Now, Walk in the Park is a public access TV show in Ithaca, New York. Anyone can become a producer. You come take a little course, come on down, Community Media, and go to our website, pegasus.webstarts.com, see the schedule of all the series, and actually see some of the current shows online, or go to our Facebook page and like that and become a fan. Okay, so this week we are going to go to Upper Buttermilk Falls State Park, and this is a episode I'm calling Trails Makeover. Let's look at this aerial photograph by local photographer Bill Hecht, and we're looking from over Inlet Valley at the gorges coming down the hill at Buttermilk Falls. And right in the center, the gorge there is the main gorge of Buttermilk Falls State Park, and the falls are at the bottom. And to the left is another gorge called Owl Gorge with no trails. But that big arrow in the upper right there is pointing to the area we're going in the upper park, which includes something called the Bear Trail and then the Lake Tremont Trail. And just to the right of the arrow, you might see a little bit of light color. That might be what they call Lake Tremont. So here's a map of the upper park. And the upper part of it in the map here, the red trail, is the Bear Trail. It goes along Buttermilk Creek from the between the two picnic areas in the upper park, and then below is a trail that goes around Lake Tremont, which isn't much of a lake anymore, but it's a beautiful walk. So here's the Bear Trail, where it starts out on King Road, what it's going to look like very soon. And in nicer weather, it's a beautiful walk in the woods. There's lots of wildflowers in the spring. And so here we are. Here's a map. We're going to go actually the lower picnic area there, which is actually the upper one near the so-called lake. We're going to walk in there into the Bear Trail and the red trail a little bit with some folks from Finger Lake State Parks, that a trail crew that has been making improvements. So let's go right to that. We'll get started on looking at what they've been doing. So I'm here with Zach Ballard and Hank and Alyssa, who's out of the frame at this point, but Zach is the regional trails coordinator for the Finger Lake State Parks, and we're on the Bear Trail in Upper Buttermilk Falls State Park, and their crew has been doing a lot of work on our trails, and some of it's very exemplary here in Upper Buttermilk, and it's give you an idea of some of the work that's going on in other parks as well as will be going on in other parks. So if you've walked the Bear Trail, you know that this section can get really wet, and you're hopping from rock to rock, and hopefully you don't get muddy, but something's been done here to address that.
Yes, so what we have here is a relatively simple structure. It's a boardwalk. And basically what we've done is we've elevated the trail surface. So in trail work, there's a couple things that you're always trying to do. It's getting water out of the trail or getting the trail out of the water. In this case, what we have is an area behind us that is continually wet. It seeps water naturally, but it's not water that flows. So it's not water that we can divert away from the trail. It just kind of sits in the trail. So what we did is we used some dimensional lumber to basically raise an artificial trail surface. So we made a boardwalk. The big problem we were trying to eliminate, from a human perspective, is we were trying to get hikers to stay on this section of trail. A lot of times hikers don't like to get their feet wet. They don't like to get their feet muddy. I know I don't. So they'll try to avoid the mud, hopping from stone to stone. In lieu of that, they try to go through the woods. And basically you take a wet, muddy area and you expand it, and it just keeps growing exponentially. So by building a hardened surface that's elevated out of the mud, we're essentially trying to get the hikers out of that muddy area. It's good for the hikers, keeps feet dry. It's also good for the natural area. It allows natural vegetation to regrow, as we talked about at another site. The other thing it does is it basically eliminates excess erosion, excess sedimentation from mud and water traveling into the main stream. If you really want to get on a grand scale, a lot of hikers come through here and it can lead to increased turbidity in the stream. We don't want that necessarily. But the long and short of it is it's limiting the impact on the environment surrounding the trail by focusing hikers to stay on the trail, and then it's keeping the hikers, dry, secure, feeling good about where they're walking, and able to enjoy the scenery and not what's right under their feet. So.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to walking this and not having to hop rocks and also worry about people trampling all the nice wildflowers that are out in this section of the woods. This is one of the best wildflower areas in the Finger Lakes parks. Okay, so cool. We're going to go to another section of the Bear Trail where they rerouted it away from a stream being undermined, the stream undermining the bank. So let's go right to that. Okay, so maybe you could explain what's going on here, what you have done.
So basically what we've done here is we've rerouted the existing trail. This is the Bear Trail at Upper Buttermilk Falls State Park. And as you can see over here, we have the creek, which has severely undercut the bank. The old trail ran basically where the edge of that undercut is, causing a pretty treacherous situation if somebody were to fall. So we rerouted the trail. You can see it. So you can get around the leaves that are on the ground, but you can see the trail is threading along this slope and back up to the original trail. So we basically brought the trail back as far as we could to try to make this a little more safer, make the trail a little bit more sustainable so it lasts hopefully longer than a few more years.
That's great. It looks like it's been here a long time. You wouldn't even know that the trail had been rerouted, but I do remember so much of walking along that eroding bank over there that worrying about it collapsing into the creek. And so quite a nice set of wildflowers along there in the spring, I know. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and this trail's great. There's a lot of trillium on this trail, and one of the things we try to do when we do our construction work is to try to preserve as much of the natural plant life that's around. As you can see, there's a lot of debris in the area, so old logs, dead sticks, leaves. That was placed there purposely to try to obliterate the old trail, to get that back to a natural area so it's not inviting for hikers to re-walk on that area and try to promote some native plant growth after the fact.
Right. So did you guys work on this section of the trail? Or?
Not us personally. We had a group that worked with AmeriCorps, and they were out here and they pretty much did all this on their own. We just pointed them in the right direction and they did a really good job. So yeah, it's nice to be able to have groups that come in and help us out. But yeah, we'll see some of the other work that we personally have worked on.
Yeah, okay.
As we go forward.
Yeah. So this is Hank. This is Hank.
Hank. Yep.
And
Alyssa.
And of course,
I'm Zach.
Okay, so we went a little. We didn't go as far as this, but a little farther along the trail. This is actually a picture I took in the spring. There's this incredible seep that comes down the hill that supports a perennial, luscious growth of skunk cabbage. I actually like skunk cabbage, but it doesn't smell too good if you crush the leaves in the spring. Well, at the bottom of that seep, and you can see the skunk cabbage on the right, the bottom of that hill there with the seep in it, is very wet area, so they built this boardwalk across that, and then on the far end of it, it was still wet over there, so they had to, for the abutment for this bridge, they had to build this box, and they put stone in it that would drain water. So, and then just above that, if you look behind the picture there, the slope goes up, and you may know that slope if you use this trail a lot, and it was a terribly rutted, deep gullied slope, horrible thing to go down, and they've put in these steps like that, and we'll see more about steps coming up and how they do those. So what do we have next? We're going to go to the Lake Treeman area, which is the upper picnic area there, and the trail that goes around the lake. It's about 1.5 miles long, and a very popular trail for hiking, for running, for people walking their dogs, and viewing wildlife. Very good wildlife viewing area. And here's a picture of it from the spillway to, there's a dam there. There's a spillway that is an artificial lake, and it's mostly filled in with cattails and other aquatic plants. And this is a view actually from the dam the big dam that goes around the lake, and along the trail that goes around the lake, obviously at a different time of year, an approaching time of year. And then here is the old dam built back in the 30s, I think, and that holds back the lake. And you can walk. The trail goes across the dam. You look at that rocky knob on the left. Well, the trail goes through there and crosses the dam and goes over the other side. Now we're on the other side, looking back to the Lake Tremont, and then back again, looking at the west side of the dam. There's a fisherman on the right, and then there are steps that go up to the top of the bluff. See those steps ascending, and up from the bluff you can look down on the dam. And the trail goes over a hill there. At one point, you can go down to an overlook and see much of the lake area, which you can see is now filled in with aquatic vegetation. It's become really a marsh now. So, okay, so there's our route around the lake. We're going to go around the right-hand side here, just part of the way, and look at some of the developments there. And I'm going to see if we've got, okay, so we'll bring up the next video here, which is called Check Steps. So let's see what they're doing there. Coming right up. Okay, so what's going on here, Zach?
Well, basically what we have here is a structure that we call check steps. It's not a full staircase. Generally, if you think of stairs, you think of something that's in your home, where you're gaining a lot of elevation in a pretty short amount of linear distance. What we have here is basically an erosion control device. One of the major things that we try to do in trail work is control erosion. Erosion happens naturally, wind, rain, water, time, but it also happens by a lot of hiker traffic. You get a lot of foot traffic that moves soils. Eventually trails will start to sink down until you're walking into a trench, and that just keeps the process going over and over, vicious cycle. Pretty soon we have a gorge. But basically what these check steps are, it's pieces of timber that we've laid across an eroded section of trail, and then we filled behind those timbers with gravel and some mineral soil. Mineral soil is basically dirt that doesn't have a lot of leaf matter, rotten wood, organic compounds in it. And it holds up to the stresses of hikers. And basically what happens is water tends to trickle or rush down this trail in heavy rain events. If these check steps weren't there, it would basically run down the trail, removing sediment, causing erosion. With these check steps here, basically what happens is the water hits these, it slows the travel of the water, slows the velocity, limiting its ability to take as much sediment, and then they actually serve as dams to hold sediment in place. Depending on where you are regionally, some people will call these check dams. So trail work is a very regional thing. There's a lot of terminology that is different from one section of the country to another, but essentially all we're trying to do is limit erosion and basically keep the trail where it is. So check steps.
Yeah, I think we can all remember experiences of walking down through gullies that have been eroded out, and then sometimes you have to reroute trails and all that sort of thing. So this is interesting. So how long do you think this this kind of structure will last?
That's dependent. Timber, obviously isn't as durable as stone, but this is pressure treated lumber. That's something we've started to use primarily because it allows for a little bit of a longer shelf life. It allows us to get a lot of work done in a shorter amount of time than stone. The manufacturer says that these timbers should last with ground contact for 40 years. So we're hoping 40 years, probably 2 decades, 25 years, 30 years tops, I'd say. And the nice thing about structures like this is once the wood does start to deteriorate and the timbers break down, you still have a little bit of structure that's serving the purpose of slowing water down and holding fill in. So, these are permanent in terms of our lifetime, hopefully. Longer than that, hopefully. But a lot of what we're fighting with is trying to get the work done So we're making a large impact in basically remedying the problems that exist on these trails, some of which haven't seen a lot of major work or maintenance in decades. So basically doing triage on some serious problems, and mixing that side of things with a durable material that's going to last. So.
Yeah, I've been looking at this trail for 40 years or so, and I haven't seen much done to it in that time. So some people may remember the old concrete bars that went across, and they actually started to become hazards as they got all eroded out, and so people would walk beside them, and so it's great to see this sort of thing, and looks like they'll last a park career anyway.
Hopefully. That's my hope.
Okay. So down the other end here we have an area that has yet to have that sort of treatment. Correct. And we can, I will take a look at that. I'll just put the camera on that, and we can look at the sort of situation, the sort of circumstances that this is aimed in part to take care of. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at, I think we're going to look at, building a staircase, or repairing and building a new staircase. So we'll go right to that here. Bring up the next video. Coming right up for the staircase. Okay, I'm with Hank, and
Hello.
Hello. I'm with Hank. He's on the trail crew here, and tell us about what's been going on here.
So we're still on the Lake Treeman Trail in Upper Buttermilk Falls State Park, and largely what we've done here, we've done a lot of structures, but as you can see, we have a staircase, timber staircase that we've built. A lot of the spots we've been working this summer, we are replacing some older structures that were here. Largely it was concrete curbstones that had been put in, and just over the years they kind of eroded out and like behind them, and they started tipping. There were actually a lot of them, we can put up a picture of this spot, but there was actually like a dip behind each one, and they're really hazardous to walk on. Not safe. People were starting to walk to the side of the trail, which was starting to erode the trail and just make it wider and slough off to the side. So we pulled all of those out and built these new staircases here. Makes it much easier for people to traverse these steeper sections of the park, and just in the long run too, they end up being a more sustainable structure. I think they shouldn't erode out over time. They're fairly easy and low maintenance to come in, every year. Just try to get some of the organic material and leaves off of there, and if any of the dirt has sloughed in from the side, a little bit of shovel work, and they should last a pretty good long time. And hopefully, since they're all tied together, they won't individually heave and you end up with a bunch of uneven stairs to traverse as what had been here before.
Yeah, this looks sort of like a box structure here. You've got the cross pieces, but then you've got some timbers that seem to be going underneath the riser.
Yep.
Behind it.
Yeah, we call the front part the tread, so that'd be where you walk on as you're going up the stairs, and then the return piece is the part that has contact with the return below it, as well as some ground behind it. So each of these are then spiked in the front with a piece of rebar, and as you go up the entire staircase, as opposed to the concrete, which were individual pieces that could kind of move around as they please, this is really one big long structure. Continuous, and so it should hold up a little better against freeze-thaw cycles and just erosion in general.
Yeah, anybody that has walked this trail, and many people have, will really appreciate this, because I'm sure we all remember those ankle breakers that you had to negotiate. Especially some people like to run this trail, so it was pretty scary. So I don't know if there ever were any injuries, but this should take care of those hazards.
Definitely, and we look forward to seeing everyone out here enjoying this spot and not having to risk their ankles, I guess, as they go over it.
Okay, thanks, Hank.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's go on to the next one here. We're going to look at, Alyssa's going to show us what they call a boardwalk and turnpike structure on the trail. So we'll go to that with Alyssa.
I think this is going to be one of my favorite.
So I'm speaking with Alyssa, who is on the trail crew, and tell us what we have here, Alyssa.
So here is another section of some boardwalk, and then behind it a turnpike. So this section had been just kind of wet, a little bit muddy, but mostly just looked real wet and people were avoiding it. And there's a lot of nice vegetation around that was just getting trampled. So we have elevated the walking surface and hardened it so that people can walk on the boardwalk and the turnpike. The turnpike is basically just a structure, a box made out of the dimensional lumber, pressure treated lumber, that we then fill with gravel so that it stays nice and hard.
Like crushed stone or something?
Yeah, we actually just used some gravel that had been dredged from the stream. So it's nice and hard, nice good surface to walk on, and it lets the water drain a little bit better.
So now finally on Lake Tremont we're going to go to what I'm going to call the canoe landing. This is an interesting little piece of the story here. So let's go take a look at Lake Tremont and the canoe landing. So Hank, I understand that you actually brought materials in for the work on the Lake Tremont Trail by canoe here?
Yes, that's correct. This spot where we're standing was probably the best access we could find. Conveniently about halfway on this, I believe, the east side of the trail. And, you know, otherwise it would have been close to half a mile from anywhere to carry it, and the lumber is definitely heavy. So we were fortunate enough that we found an old canoe that was in good shape and we could put in right at the dam at the outlet of the lake and float pretty good loads over here and unload, and then we only had to carry about 1/10 of a mile. And I know a lot of people are curious how we get the material in, so this is just one of the many ways, but you know, we try to minimize having to carry it by hand as much as we can, which is a pretty strenuous thing, but it was a sight to behold when Zach would come around the corner through the reeds with a canoe loaded up full of tools or lumber or whatever. So
that's great. So you would, from the picnic area, you would truck it up to there and then bring it up over onto the dam? Is that what you would do?
Yeah, that's correct. We could get a truck right up the service road right by the bridge at the outlet and then load it right off the dam into the canoe and then paddle it over here. And
not the big dam, but the little little dam.
The outlet dam that has the dam boards. That's where the sluiceway is going out of the lake.
Right, above that little falls here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Fred, tell us about what you can tell us about with this trail project. This is pretty exciting. The things that you're accomplishing out here. I mean, the trail around the lake here has been really rough for years and years with those concrete bars going across, what you call those, and
struggling with some erosion and moving of water, and yeah, it's a great enhancement to Buttermilk and Upper Buttermilk here. So what we're seeing is people who might have had difficulty navigating the trail able to take regularly intervaled steps. So we're increasing the accessibility of the trails. We're starting to see people, you know, we're talking about it right here, right now, on a daily basis coming out and making Buttermilk Falls part of their daily routine and getting outside and going for a hike or a run, bringing their dog, having conversation, and enjoying what we've got here in the Finger Lakes.
And this is a great wildlife pond here too. I remember we used to have Leave It to Beaver walks here back in the old days, and maybe they still do that, I don't know, but a lot of waterfowl stop by on here during migration, and just a really wonderful spot. So
yeah.
Where else are you doing any other projects that, well, probably Zach is
Yeah, Zach's also we've been doing some of the trail work over at Robert Treeman, as you know, and especially over by the office and working on that big kind of climb out from the lower park getting onto the gorge trail, which is really, really nice.
Yes.
Some parts in lower Buttermilk that we've been working on as well. So what we're doing is starting to, and Zach and I are talking about today, is trying to come up with some consistency and some standards, both from a design and an aesthetic standpoint, on how we can work with some trails that need some assistance.
Yeah, so you might see similar work in different parks. Like we have the stonework has been sort of a signature standard and consistency among the parks. So see that in some of the other projects as well.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to complement that. We've got some great funding through the governor's budget and Parks 2020 for these initiatives. We've got great labor force with the SCA and the
Student Conservation
Association and the Excelsior Conservation Corps. Those programs are really helping us, and it's just a real exciting time to be working on trails and access in parks.
Okay, so get on out there in those trails in Upper Buttermilk, also at Treeman, and check them out before the winter closes in. And actually, the Bear Trail is open throughout the winter. And much of the Lake Treeman Trail is the area around the dam, and the area that have the steepest steps and stuff in the past, at least, has been closed off in the winter. But you can still walk the whole western side of the lake and so forth. And there's some more of the trail improvements over there, I understand. I want to get over and get a look at those and take some pictures and stuff. So, well, thank you all for joining me this week. Now I encourage you to turn off this screen and go outside for a walk in the park. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.